My name is Adam Golov, Marketing and Communications Manager at Data Conversion Laboratory, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know we will allow time at the end of the webinar for questions and answers. So please write your questions in the chat area as they come to mind. If we don't have time to answer them all, we will make them available on our website. Next slide, please.
Sorry.
For those of you who are not familiar with DCL, we convert and organize content to create electronic documents, populate databases, publish on the web, and basically get it ready for tomorrow's technology. Next slide, please. DCL services help you refine your document conversion strategy, identify document redundancy, extract metadata, and transform legacy and future documents for real needs, today and in the future. Next slide, please. DCL serves a broad client base. Next slide, please. Spanning all industries. Next slide, please. Today, we are thrilled to introduce Andrew Smith, Program Coordinator, Sheridan College. Andrew is a dad, educator, and a user experience designer with a focus on mobile design. He is also a coffee aficionado, avid cyclist, all-round pirate, and HTML5 evangelist. Andrew's work ranges from prototyping communication systems for public transit to information visualization and knowledge building. Past client work includes Bell Canada, Bell Mobility, Alliance Atlantic, Molson Canadian, and the Royal Bank of Canada. Andrew coordinates a postgraduate program in interactive multimedia at Sheridan College and writes about how kids adapt and use technology on his blog. He has worked on a college-wide academic strategy initiative for increasing interdisciplinary and interprofessional learning experiences for students. In the past 4 years, Andrew has been researching and implementing ways to increase student engagement through technology and social media, with a focus on mobile learning and communication. Without further ado, welcome Andrew.
How's everyone today? So I'll be going through the slide deck. Like I said, hopefully you guys have some questions and we can have a discussion near the end. So Adam's introduced me, so we'll just jump right in. Okay, why mobile UX? And this is a big question everyone is asking. It's part of what the trend is with how people are accessing data, information, and the web. And it's also because we're experiencing this. And I called it, the reality of the web. It is the ever-expanding multi-device universe. And everyone is not just tied to the desktop anymore. Everyone is untethered, they're out and about, and now we have to rethink how we allow users to access and interact with content. So the big question, what is mobile UX? I tried to get this pared down to a few major points, and then I'll discuss in detail those points throughout the rest of the webinar. The thing that you want to look at is this content of mobile interaction. And if you go to giantant.com, they have this sketch of context of mobile. And what we're thinking is, like, we're dealing with the person out and about. They're doing some kind of activity. They have a device. There's some connection issues, with speed and reliability. They have some goals. They're wondering what their attention span is. They're multitasking. And in all of that, we only have a small sliver to give them an interface that's actually usable and allows them to do what they want to do. So part of what mobile UX is we need to identify who the users are, whether we're building something for web or native. We have to understand the context of use, and we have to start thinking in task-based design. So it's not just presenting information. How are the users going to access that information, and what tasks do we want them to perform within the form factor of the device? It's highly iterative, so we constantly need to be thinking and rethinking how we're going to present content and our interface to the users. We also have to think about contextual aspects of the device or the information. So With mobile devices, we have things like geolocation available to us that actually can bring about how we present information, lowering the task loading on users, and from that we can actually then have stuff happen in the background that helps users throughout the day, how they're interacting with content. And designed for interruption, so everything is not a sit-down, work on something for 5 minutes. Users may be working on something for 30 seconds, 20 seconds, who knows how long they're going to be working on something. You also have to strive for simplicity, but not make it over-simple that you are actually insulting the user. You need to be able to create something that is simple to use, simple to understand, and has a very short learning curve. And the other thing with mobile UX is it's never finished. You're always having to create and rethink what you've done from the past. New form factors come out, new screen sizes come out, new OS updates are constantly coming out, and with each of those changes, you have to rethink and redesign a lot of times what you've done in the past. So in the end, it's a big balancing act. So you have to put all of these things into consideration when you're designing something for the user. So I like to look at it as a big game of Jenga. You have constraints and behaviors. So you have the constraints of the device and the user behaviors, and you also have the capabilities of the device versus the needs of the user. And you're constantly wrestling when you're designing UXs for mobile with these 4 things. And the most important part is behaviors and needs will often go beyond the constraints and capabilities of the devices. So we have to put that into consideration as well. So user experience on mobile, they're unique, they're contextual, there's stuff that happens that that the device does for us, and they're personalized. So we don't know where the user is, how they're using it, what they've done to the device to make it their own, and we then have to play within that sandbox that the user has created on their devices. So here's some considerations for UX, mobile UX, is the device itself, the person, whoever the user may be, the context of where they're doing the activity, and the activities that they're doing. So if we actually look at this photo, they're in a social setting, coffee shop, but you also have to look at how they're holding the devices. You have the palm in the hand person, you've got the 2-thumb activity, and then you've got the 2-hand activity. So these are also part of the considerations on how we design stuff for the user. So really, mobile UX is about people, and it's not about the devices. The devices will change, and the focus has to be on who the user is, what kind of tasks we want them to do, and so on. So how do we start in mobile UX? You basically have to immerse yourself in it. It's kind of hard to build mobile experiences if you're not a mobile phone user. So one of the best things is to simply get a mobile device, whether it's a tablet or a smartphone or any other platform that's out there. Download apps, play with apps, throw out the apps once you're done with them. Go to your favorite website, see what that experience is from the desktop to the mobile device. How does it change? Is it changing? And what are the issues that you're having? And then you want to observe people out and about in the real world. So being in a big city like New York, or I'm up here in Toronto, you ride the subway system, people are on their devices, some are sitting, some are standing. Sometimes the subway is crowded, sometimes it's not. You want to see people how they're using it on the street, in stores, and when they're waiting for things, and so on. So observing gives you a good idea of how and where people are using devices and what they're using them for. And then you want to look for pain points. What are the things that are interrupting the user? What are the things that are preventing the user from completing tasks? What are the things that actually make the user stop using either the application, whether it's native or web, and put it down, delete it, or never come back to your content. So then you have to champion the user. And you basically, as a UX designer for mobile, have to think about the user, and when you're in meetings with clients, you are their advocate. And so what you want to do is you want to provide the user with options within the content, build micro interactions. So there's a book, and the name of the author escapes me right now, but there's a book from O'Reilly on micro interactions, and if you play with a lot of apps and web apps on mobile devices, people are starting to build in ways of accessing settings, other screens, and so on, not by flipping or poking or tapping, but by these short interactions within the content that actually allow the user to move quickly through the content without having to think quite a lot. You know, something as simple as show hide passwords. Entering content into a form field on a mobile device is hard. Give the user the option to look at their password to make sure that they're typing it properly. You want to build easy first interactions. When you introduce the user to your content on the device, you want to make sure that the first steps are easy so that you don't get frustrated and so on. And you want to build in forgiveness. So if they make a mistake, they can always go back. And understand the technology. So again, probably the number one thing to do is to actually have a device on hand. Also understand some of the terminologies, things like screen size, DPI, PPI, you know, pixels per inch, dots per inch. What does retina really mean? What is the type of abstraction layer that the device or OS is using? How are the OSs different from each other, and so on. So if anyone has questions right now or up to now, you know, you can shoot them over to Adam, and then we can start the discussion for after the seminar or webinar, sorry, is done. So trends in devices. Again, you have to kind of immerse yourself in this. One of the important things to have is an actual device library, which I'll talk about later. But you want to see what's happening out there. You know, Zyte just came out, has the Firefox OS. There's a resurgence of WebOS, and surprisingly, it's going for televisions. And you know, the latest and greatest iOS 8 and the new Android Lollipop coming out. So these are all things that you need to be informed about, understand how they work, where they work, and what are their differences and nuances. So just to put this into perspective, right now you may have to design for something that has a screen size of 1.5 inches, and there is an Android tablet coming out near Christmas time that is 50 inches. So imagine carrying around a tablet basically the size of a flat panel screen TV. One of the ironic things is it comes with a kickstand so it doesn't fall over. And the other interesting point is the 50-inch tablet is actually designed for kids. So hopefully it doesn't fall over on a kid while they're using it. But someone has a use case for that and thought it was a good thing to bring to market. So when you're designing, you're wrestling with all these screen sizes. Ideally, iOS has a limited set of screen sizes, whereas Android and its fragmentation has multiple screen sizes, multiple resolutions, and so on. And, whoops, my slide deck is a little bit messed up on this stage. So someone tweeted approximately half a year ago that these are all the simply for Samsung, all the Android screen sizes. So you're dealing with the screen sizes from 2.8 all the way up to 10.1 and so on. So again, you're looking at different screen sizes, different form factors, and you're having to design for all of these at any given time. So mobile web technically is the web, and you know, they share the common infrastructure, but the mobile is not the traditional web. It's different. We're not tied to a desktop. We don't have to have place to sit down and access the web. We can be out and about in our daily lives, accessing content, accessing information at any given time. And the mobile is a different environment, and it requires new thinking and design considerations. So we have the form factors, screen size, how much information are you presenting, what are you presenting. And the way I like to caveat this is you want to harness the power of a missile-throwing robot with laser beams for eyes on a unicorn. So that is the mobile web in essence. And you want to constantly think that it's a changing environment. It's constantly different. It's unique, and so on. The other thing is that the web by nature is fluid. So our content is fluid. A long time ago, we used to be able to just have to design for set screen sizes like 640 by 480 and so on. And now, we're locked into these, unlocked from all these screen sizes that used to come with Photoshop. You know, you say like, what is our project going to be done in? We'd say 1024 by 768. You'd simply say that from your spec setup in Photoshop, and you design away. That is all gone. There is no, you do not know what the user is using. You do not know what the size of the user's screen is. And we have to build this fluid content. So one of the first things we need to escape from is desktop idioms. So, you know, keyboard input, mouse input, technically those don't exist anymore. We even have laptops that have touch screens, so you have to think about touch as the primary way of getting at content and moving through the information space. And we still have to have some coherence to the desktop. We still have to have a way of people being able to move through pages, move through content, and interact with the content, but it's no longer tied to the standard desktop interactions. So a couple of years ago, Google came out with how people are technically interacting with content on devices, the bored now, repetitive now, urgent now. This has somewhat been disproven through other studies with the Pew Institute and so on. And we have to really think about the reality. People are actually surfing not, you know, when they're out and about waiting in line at the grocery store, but most likely they're surfing from the comfort of their own couch. So they're watching TV, they're interacting with other people, and they're doing it in comfort of their own home. So we want to look at information and mobile as a spatial, temporal, and local. So spatial meaning where are they when they're doing it? It's temporary, it's now, and what they're finding is that through Google, most searches for on mobile are actually local. So I need a new pair of shoes. People are going to start looking and searching for where's the closest shoe store, or hey, I want to go for pizza. Where's the closest pizzeria? And then we also want to do things that we generally don't do on the desktop, like we want to animate to orient and capture the user's attention. So we may slide things in, we may drop things down, we're going to provide the user some kind of loading feedback with spinners or progress bars that we normally wouldn't have to do to such degree on the desktop. So this is one of my pro tips when you're dealing with clients, is you want to document all the types of models and devices you encounter, especially in kickoff meetings. And you want to look at, you know, the decision makers. What kind of devices are they carrying with them? And make sure that whatever you build works on those devices. So the last thing you want is to build something that doesn't work on a decision maker's or a stakeholder's device, and they can kibosh your entire project. So you also want to design for context. And what this is you want to design for how things are going to be used, how things are going to be accessed, and so on out in the wild. Whoops. So one of the first things is a lot of times you're going to put video or some kind of interactive content into your application, whether it's native or web, and lo and behold, it doesn't operate the same way as the desktop. So you'll have things that iOS tends to launch a separate video player for video, then the user has to close that, then they return to where they started off in the content, and so on. So you need to understand the user flow and how it's going to change as the user goes through the information space, the type of interactions they're going to do, and so on while they're working through your content. The other thing is you have to look at how they're going to interact with the content. Are they going to scroll down? Is it scroll left, right with pagination? Are they tapping? Do they have to double tap? Do they poke at it? Is there going to be pinch and zoom involved? And so on inside the form factor. And you also have to plan for how people are going to input information. So when you design something as simple as a form field, you have to realize that half of the screen, or a good portion of the screen in the lower part, will be taken up by the keyboard. How are you going to show, how are you going to hide things, how are you going to have the user be able to dispel this or send away the keyboard once they're done? How can they see the content that's underneath the keyboard, and so on. And then you want to think about ecosystems and not devices. So this goes back to what is the platform, what is the OS? Is it iOS? Is it Android? Is it some other OS that's currently on the market? And you want to be able to plan how people are going to interact with that content and how people are going to view that content based on the platform or the ecosystem, rather than, is this an iPhone 4? Is this a Nexus 4? What operating system? What version are they running? And so on. So if you have questions, again, please free to start posting so we can have some fun. And what we're going to look at is some Fitts Law. And Fitts Law is really important when we start designing our mobile experiences. So Fitts Law, is simply a model of human movement that predicts the time required to rapidly move to a target area as a function of distance to the target and the size of the target. That is the official sort of definition from Wikipedia. And if we simplify it, the bigger and closer the target is, the easier it is to hit. So when we start making buttons and tap spaces inside our applications or within our web content that's going to be on a device, bigger is better, but how big and how close things are has to be designed properly in order for ease of use and make sure that the user is able to access content without actually making mistakes and so on. So this is Fitts Law. Basically, the usability goes up as the target size goes up. And the bigger the button, the easier it is to hit, and so on. But now that we know that a big button is easier to hit, the problem is we actually have the possibility of a small screen size. Then how do we retranslate that big button into a small screen? So what I recommend for everyone is you have to read Higgs. And Higgs is one of those terminology that you're going to have to get accustomed to hearing and reading up on as new versions of OSs come out and new platforms come out. So Higgs are your human interface guidelines. There's one for Apple. There's also one for Android. Android just recently has Android L come out, and their material design aspects are posted. iOS 8 has come out for Apple. They all have their new Higgs posted, and it's a good idea to start kind of poking around the Higgs before you actually start designing things, because the platforms and the ecosystems do certain things that is pre-built into them or have certain types of functionality, and you do not want to go head-to-head with that functionality. So if there's a way that something is done on the platform and you're thinking, hey, I'm going to try something new, that new thing may not work, or users who are already on that platform going to have an expectation of how something works based on their prior experience with the ecosystem. So small touch targets equals big problems. So this is something from the Apple HIG as well as the MIT Touch Lab. So if we design buttons that are 44 pixels, 57 pixels, and 72 pixels. Now, 44 pixels is basically the fingertip width of the average adult. 57 pixels is the finger pad area that is for adults. And 72 pixels is the finger pad, or the pad area for the average adult thumb. So we have two sort of design aspects for the finger, and we have a design aspect or design style for the thumb. And realistically, we should be moving to the thumb as more and more people are becoming thumb interactions or thumb design or thumb users than finger users. So this is just a quick example. I've got two buttons. One is designed for the fingertip and the other is designed for the thumb. So these are our hit targets. So we've got the fingertip and the thumb. And then if we've designed something for the fingertip, we can actually run into some problems. So I've swapped the hit targets. So even if we design for the thumb and the person decides to use either their fingertip or finger pad, they're still going to be within the hit area of the button, whereas the hit area for the fingertip design button has to have a lot of space around it to accommodate the thumb. But then if we add some buttons, now we're going to have issues with the user creating problems, mistapping, hitting the wrong button, and so on. So if you go to Luke Robrewski's website or lukew.com, he has a whole series of entries on touch zones and device interactions. So if we look back through the presentation at my original one with the people in the coffee shop, these are the way people generally are holding their devices. The main thing to take away from this is people are using their thumbs when they interact with content. So we have to think about what is easy to hit with our thumb, what's okay through reach, and what actually becomes hard. So if we look at the traditional form factor, and this would be something closer to iPhone 3G, you know, we've got this big target area that's actually easy for the user to use and sweep with their thumb. But now we throw on the heat map zone applied to all the different iPhone displays. So now we've got the original iPhone, iPhone 5, iPhone 6, and now the new 6 Plus. And if we look at the natural target area, they haven't really changed in terms of real estate, but the amount that is actually accessible when we go to something like the iPhone 6 has fallen dramatically. And now we have to think about how much is the user going to stretch, how many things are actually outside of the user's normal thumb area for touching content and interacting with content. So if you're designing something for the iPhone 6, iPhone 6 Plus, anything that's important that requires a lot of user input, what you have to think about is now that that red zone has gotten that much bigger. And where are we going to put things like navigational elements? Where are we going to put in things that create interaction within the content to change content when the red zone and our stretch zones are actually getting bigger as devices get bigger? So how do we go about designing for mobile? I would say the first thing to do is to go analog and pick up a pencil, get a sketchbook, and you want to get some background information from the device or form factors that you're designing for, the ecosystems that you're going to be looking at and designing, and simply sketch. Get some, then compare what you sketched to the HIG for each of the platforms, see if it matches up. If not, go back to the drawing board. The other thing I recommend is you want to be able to do this sketch, iterate, repeat cycle, very much like washing your hair, you know, the rinse, lather, repeat instructions that are on every shampoo bottle. You want to do the same thing with your design work for mobile UX. You want to sketch, iterate, repeat. And the nice thing about sketching and using paper is if it doesn't work, it just can be thrown away. You haven't invested a lot of time. Sketching allows you to do a lot of quick iterative work. It allows you to say, hey, what if I put the button here versus here? You can cut the piece of paper out into that form factor, see how it actually works, rather than doing a lot of prototyping at the beginning. You're doing a lot of iterative work here, and so on. The other thing is you can get some stencils and sketch pads. So if you look at uistencils.com, they have iPhone stencils, Android stencils. So a lot of the form factor, a lot of the iconography and buttons that are actually there are pre-baked into the stencil, so you can quickly design and sketch. You also, if you Google smartphone templates, there's probably 101 different templates that you can print out that are stacked for the various platforms that you can start designing and sketching with. And once you've done your sketch work, you want to start prototyping. You know, start putting in where are the buttons, what do the downstates look like, what does the interaction of pressing look like. And you can then build up these quick little paper mock-ups of how your content is going to work, how the user will use the content or interact with it on the certain platforms. And you can test some hypotheses like, can I put a back button here? Can I create a drop-down menu here? And how will that change the way the user works and designs or plays, with your application? So here are some prototyping tools that allow you to actually take your sketches. So if I go back, so they allow you to take your sketches, either stencils and so on, and your paper prototypes, and convert them into actual prototypes. So one is Axure, the other is Envision app, and OmniGraffle. I personally like Envision because it allows collaborative work. So I can create a wireframe, create some button actions, slider actions, and then you can send that off to somebody and they can add in their interactions and content, and then you can actually have a somewhat working prototype. There's also an application for the iPhone called PaperPop. All you do is you take pictures of your sketches. Then it has a simple menu system that allows you to add button actions, slide actions, and within a few minutes you actually have a full-blown working prototype that actually works within the device in question. The other thing all three of those have is they have library and widgets. So if you need a slider widget, we'll have a slider widget. If you need a menu widget, a lot of the stuff is pre-baked into the applications. And it allows you to rapidly prototype your idea, get it into the device, get it into a user's hand, get some feedback, take that feedback, reiterate your design, and go through the process again before investing a lot of time and money in doing proper programming, coding, and design work. So does everyone remember their first tricycle, or remember how their niece, nephew, or kids reacted to getting their first tricycle? You know, so imagine a prototype is that tricycle. And if we are stuck in just using Photoshop or some kind of static model to design our prototypes, it's like going to a child and going, oh, I have this awesome red tricycle for you. It's got a horn, it's got a bell, it's got streamers. And when you go down really fast, the streamers will flap in the wind. And you tell that person or child at the tricycle is just outside, they run outside and it's chained to a post. And this is the same thing that happens when you start designing in sort of static tools like Photoshop. Is you're basically creating a chained up tricycle. So we want to avoid static mockups. They don't tell us anything how something works or how it's going to be used. The other thing is you can't really do usability testing with a bunch of Photoshop comps. You can't do interactions. You don't understand how the person is going to pull, tap, pinch, zoom with a static mockup. It also doesn't show transitions, which is one of the main things that happen on mobile, is there's some kind of transition or movement through the information space. And it lacks the fluidity because you've locked it into a specific size. So static mockups are just that. They're static. They don't actually give you the full picture. You want to get into interactive prototypes that allow you to show and see how the user's going to work with stuff. And the other thing is they don't display web fonts. So, if your client has a specific kind of font, static mockups don't actually display web fonts, and you can't really display web fonts in most static mockups. So what you want to do is you want to plan your interactions and interface. You want to think about what is the actual interaction that the user is going to have, and what do you have to do in the interface to have them accomplish those interactions. I picked this picture because every time I commute to downtown Toronto, there's always someone who has lost their phone and it falls, off the platform. And to me, this is almost a weekly occurrence where people are trying to find their phone or getting a subway employee to help them find their phone or retrieve it. So I always picture in this mind that the person is asking Siri what they were supposed to do when they get home, because they don't actually remember what they're supposed to do, so they're yelling down to Siri, going like, what was I supposed to do? Was I supposed to get milk? So part of planning our interactions and our interface is we actually want to start thinking gestures and taps. So we want to plan for those. And are we doing swipes? Are we doing thumb taps? Are we doing finger taps? And we also want to help users with errors and mistaps. So, you can think about how many times if you're somewhere, you're in a coffee shop and you're trying to open up an application or go through a website, how many times you've actually hit the wrong link. So we actually want to help users with being able to handle errors and find what they were actually trying to do or complete the task that they were trying to do. And then we want to plan for the fat finger. So one of the things is that we're thinking about the thumb. We're not sure how users are going to be holding the device. And one of the crazy things that we've done is we do some extreme user testing from time to time. And we've actually given people a hot dog, and we actually see if the people can actually use the tip of the hot dog to actually trigger events and tap through links and so on. So you want to plan for the taps and gestures, but the real thing is you want to start designing for the thumb, as the thumb has become the most common way people are interacting with their phones and devices. You can get touch templates. They actually help you design your interactions. They have a overlay system. They can show you where things are good, things to avoid. They also have a couple hints, like your button should really be this size for the finger, this size for the thumb, and so on. So if you Google touch template, sorry, the gentleman's name is Steve Hoover. He's designed it. It's I think it's $3 for a touch template. Very helpful, along with having a stencil and a good pencil. Highly recommend having one of these. And then you want to start building a device library. So it's not good enough to use emulators. You actually want to have real devices on hand. So, if you have family or friends who are upgrading their phone from whatever they have currently and are doing their device or hardware upgrade, ask if you can have their old phone. Most likely old phones end up in a drawer somewhere, so you might as well put them to good use, help you build your device library. And then you can use some different tools out there to help with your device library. One of them is Adobe Edge Inspect, which allows you to do work on a desktop or laptop, and then it sends your changes to all the devices so you can see immediately what everything is going to present or how it's going to get presented on devices. There's a couple free sort of setups. There's remote preview, which I use all the time. It takes a little bit of server knowledge, but once you unpack it and get it up on your server, you just point all the devices to the web page address, and whatever live changes you're making, either with Sublime Text or Dreamweaver, all show up on the devices, and you don't have to go and play and poke with every device as you go through your changes. So just some more device chain library pictures. BBC is a great example of also progressive enhancement or adaptive design. They have their website that how it looks on all the devices, but most likely they show it on what it looks like on a Kindle reader. Kindle readers, the sale of readers is actually growing quite rapidly. So again, if you go to the Pew Institute or Pew Research and look up e-readers, the sales of e-readers are growing exponentially year after year, and it's something that you should plan for when you design your content. So test constantly is sort of a mantra that I use. So you don't want to test at the end. You want to constantly be testing throughout the design process. So when you start on paper, start testing, doing some ad hoc user testing. When you get into your prototype, do some ad hoc user testing. And as you're in the development phase, remember to do ad hoc user testing, or you can actually do structured user testing depending on your timelines and your budget. So one of the things you want to also do is you want to test whatever you're designing, whether it's a native app or a web app, website, responsive website. You want to test it under extreme conditions or extreme use cases. So does your device perform well? Yes, it does, because your content is being accessed either at a strong Wi-Fi system or a full bar connectivity to the network. But what is the load time for your website once the user, say, goes into the subway system, they're in an area that has poor network connections, you're working on a one-bar scenario. Are they running? Are they in a crowd? Are they in some place that is noisy? Are they in some place that's a low light, high light situations? You want to go through your designs through these extreme conditions. And I mentioned this before, you want to test under low connectivity. The worst user experience is the white blank screen that the user gets when they launch your app or launch your website. Is they sit there, they desperately need to do something, they have to tell someone something, they have to buy something, they have to get something, and all they are doing is they're sitting and staring at a blank screen or a white screen waiting for content to load. So, find that place somewhere in the city that has a poor network connection, go into a building, go into the lower levels, into a parking garage, see what it's like to work under low connections, and so on. And it'll actually have you reshape the type of layout, and it may even reshape the type of graphics you're planning to use for your project. And the worst case is you want to be able to have users not kibosh your end product, or even worse, major stakeholders kibosh your product because it doesn't work for whatever reason. You're in a meeting room, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no network connection, and stakeholders just completely smash whatever you designed for them simply because it won't load properly. So, the users are often on the go. You have to make the tasks to complete clear. So you don't know what the use case is for the user. I'm not sure if anyone's ever tried to buy concert tickets on their phone. Not a very pleasant experience. I've done things like buy airline tickets on my phone, and that's been a pleasant experience. So if you go to the Virgin American site, it's a responsive site, completely built for booking and buying tickets through a mobile device or some sort of mobile platform. And then you want to design for what's called pivot, snack, and burst. So when you start building content for mobile, the thing that it does is it remembers the last thing it does. So if you were in a browser and you are on a certain page and you close that browser, when you open up that browser again, you're right where you left off. So you have to build things that people can pivot through the information space, understand where they are before when they get there, because if they've gone through steps A, B, and C, and they're at C, they close the browser, they open it back up, they're at C. And you have to make it clear that they can go back to B and A and so on. Snacking, those small bursts or small nibbling at content. So someone wants to see what the box scores are for recent, either for a World Series game, hockey game, whatever it may be. They want to get a piece of news. They want to know what the weather's like for the evening. They'll quickly open up some app, look at the information, and move on. And then bursts are where they do things for 5 to 10 minutes. But again, you have to understand the use case and how they're using or accessing the content. You also want to design for what I call the one eye, one thumb. So they're either walking, talking, doing multitasking. Part of their attention is on the phone. Part of their attention is on the space that they're in. It could be quiet. It could be noisy. And there's this constant state of partial attention. So they're not fully engaged in the content or in your application, but they're not also they're also paying attention to what's going on around them as well. So there's no full immersion, especially if they're multitasking. They may get fully immersed for a few seconds, but the thing you want to do is that you want to design the UX for mobile experience is that they look down, they look up, they look back down, they know exactly what they were doing or where they were in the information space. And then you want to design things for extreme use cases. Like, I don't know how many people need to answer texts while they're on their bike in traffic. This is something that I would not personally do in Toronto traffic, but who knows. And also you want to give timely information. So again, we have some user he's on a bicycle, he's texting or accessing an app. He may not understand that there's road construction ahead, but you want to give the user that there is something happening, some kind of notification that's necessary to get the user to fully engage or realize that something is about what they're going to get is up to date. And then you want to edit content ruthlessly. If clients give you information or their content and say, please put this onto the web, you generally want to get about a third to a half of that content cut down so it's more digestible. It's in bite-sized snacks so they can snack and burst on it. And then use the right tool for the right metaphor. So is it a mobile application? Is it native? Is it web? Is it responsive? And so on. And then again, I said plan your interactions and your interfaces because we don't know what will happen or where we'll be and how things will be going on. And then strive for simplicity. So, back in the day, I remember my dad's car had the radio buttons. You only had 6 channels to choose from. Now users have thousands of information spots that they can go to, websites, applications that they can use. And you have to strive for simplicity to get the user to be able to do what they need to do. And then there's future considerations, like what is coming out next week? What have manufacturers planned for next year? You're constantly having to think about what is going to happen with devices. Will devices move away from touch? Will they actually, what kind of haptic feedback are you going to be able to use? How are you going to interact with devices? How are you going to be able to move through an information space, and so on? And if anyone has actually seen your Minority Report, here's a quick little usability tidbit. When there's any scene with Tom Cruise doing the hand wavy gestures, do it with him and see how quickly your arms tire. So whenever someone says, I have clients who've come to me and say, I want the same experience as, in Minority Report. First question is why? And then you have to say, well, that's highly unlikely, or what's the use case for it? So just to wrap up, what is mobile UX? Again, we have to identify the users, the context of use, think task-based design. It's highly iterative, so we're constantly revising things that we've done. We have to test our design hypothesis, possibly ideally with real users, go back and make changes. There's the contextual part of it, where the device actually knows a bit of information, leverage that information in the user experience. So if I'm about to search for something, say, again, pizza, the device will say, I know where you are right now. There's a pizzeria around the corner. There's another pizzeria close by. I'm going to give you the pizzeria that has the highest rating on Yelp versus the other one. So you can build these contextual experiences. Then you want to design for interruption, because you want to know the user will be interrupted. They will be doing something in short bursts. And then strive for simplicity. So try to make your interfaces and UI clutter-free, present what needs to be presented. A lot of stuff that happens in UI is a nice to have, but really you want to strip it down into the need to have. And then your design work is never finished. The next version of an OS may come out, a new device may come out, and you may have to rethink everything that you've done to date. So if anyone has questions, please feel free, and we can start the Q&A session.
Well, thank you, Andrew. This has definitely been a very informative webinar. We've had some questions already come in, and the first one is, what are some examples of best-in-class mobile user experience applications today?
If we're doing strictly applications, I think Twitter is a good example of good mobile UX. I would actually even put a little bit of a caveat on that. I would say that the iOS version is a lot better than the Android version. I used to really like Foursquare until they separated Foursquare into Foursquare and Swarm, and Path, the old Path, not the new Path. And if you're looking for looking for a good mobile browser, I would recommend Dolphin. Dolphin has a lot of features from a UX designer standpoint that will help. It has what's called screen cut. You can actually do screen grabs really easily from Dolphin. You can actually do the entire screen, not just the viewing screen. So that's more of a use app. And I love my Starbucks app. I can't live without that one.
Me too. Thank you. The next question that's come in is thoughts on the best way to provide user assistance help for mobile UX?
How to give users assistance? Was the question?
Provide. Yes, provide.
Well, usually the old thinking is if you go to, I believe it's the Forbes.com, for the first time it puts this massive overlay of like how the navigational system works. That's overkill. from a user perspective, if you're building something as simple as a sign-up form, why don't you pre-populate their, city or location from the geolocation cache in the phone from the device? That's something that's really simple. Labels. Labels are important. Like we tend to move away from labels and everything is icons. And if you look at usability studies, like either from Nielsen Group, Luke Rubruski, and others, they say that an icon with a label is probably the most helpful thing you can do for users on a mobile device. The amount of recognition that they have to go through for an icon and the cognitive loading to recognize what that icon is drops dramatically if you simply put labels on. And that's.
Thank you, Andrew. The next question that has come in is it typical for a client to change app developers for updates?
What do you mean by change app developers after update? Can you say the question again?
Yep. Is it typical for a client to change app developers for updates?
Yes and no. Usually when you design things for clients, you want to bake how you're going to handle maintenance and updates into your contract. So if you're developing something right now, say you started 6 months ago for iOS 7, you realize that Apple releases a new OS, mid-fall every year. You know that the launch date of the application is going to be somewhat before iOS 8. You'll simply say, in your contract, ideally you'll say we're going to be able to provide you an update when the new OS rolls out, and then you have to come up with some kind of budget. And I usually say a third of the total budget should be the price for maintenance and updates, because you don't know how drastically things are going to change. And from a client's perspective, to take all that code and design work, pick it up and take it to somebody else, they're going to go through a learning curve, and it probably will be even more expensive than originally thought. So I'm not sure if that was the direction of the question, but. Okay.
Well, if the person who sent that question replies back, I'll let you know. Okay. But the next question that's come in, Andrew, is, and this is kind of wordy, so please bear with me. Hi, you have a lot of observations, suggestions, and general things to think about. But can you talk about specific choices that an actual client made? For example, like how they decided between a responsive website versus a mobile app.
Okay. That's a great question, and that's something that I encounter on a regular basis. Is you go into the first client meeting and the client says, I want an app that does whatever. And then you have to say, what is the actual rationale for them having an app? Are you leveraging features that are baked into the phone? So do you need the camera? Do you need geolocation? Do you need tilt? Do you need to access the accelerometer? A lot of that stuff now you can do through the browser. The other thing is, once you have an app, is this a short-term thing where they're just launching an app because they have some kind of advertising campaign, or they simply think that an app is the best way to get onto the information into everyone's hands? So for an app, you have to think about what are they doing that the web can't do, then you want an app. If they're doing something that has like long-term, like a game, games tend to have better performance as an app versus a web app or responsive. And you also have to inform the client that, look, you have this I can build you this app. It'll run up until this iOS comes out. After that, it may not work anymore. Then you have to go and start talking about, okay, do you want something that has content that's updated on every time a new OS comes out, or does the information inside the app have to be updated all the time? And if the information inside the app has to be updated all the time, you're better off building a responsive site. But again, it comes down to generally clients want an app because that's what they understand about mobile. They don't see it as a responsive website, or they don't see it as a website, they see it as an app. And you can actually do things to satisfy the client. So you can build a app shell, which it looks like an app. It's in the App Store. They download it, but when they click on it, it's simply a gateway to a responsive site. And then you don't have to worry about updates and so on. And then you can always update mobile sites or responsive sites much easier than apps. Because you don't know, Apple is pushing I believe it's Starling. So all the stuff that you built in C++, you may have to throw it all out the next time Apple launches Starling. I always push responsive sites because it's ease of update. You don't have to, the budget and maintenance costs for web are much lower. Like, you know, oh, our store hours have changed. Bloop, that's done. Whereas in the app, you may have to republish and go through the whole app cycle once again to just update something as simple as, you know, store hours.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew. We have a couple more questions. The next question is, do you recommend using emulators?
I would say yes for a little bit, but the reality is for emulators don't actually show you the full experience. An emulator sits on your desktop. You're going to have to play with it with the mouse and keyboard. So you don't know what you've designed is actually going to work once it's in someone's hands or on a device. So emulators are good. Having actual devices and using real devices is always the better way to go.
All right, excellent, thank you. The next question is, what kind of usability testing tools are you using?
There's a few different, depending on the platform. If you're testing just where you should place buttons or menu items, there's an app called Kerplunk or Plunk app, and it's a Zerb product. All you do is you take either a photo of your sketches or you create a PNG, you upload it to Plunk app, and you can send out a URL through Twitter and some very other means of distribution. And you can simply ask a simple question like, hey, where's the menu, or where do you think you would find our products and services? And people will touch it, they'll poke at the interface, and then you get a scatter plot graph of where people have touched and so on. So if you're asking them to find a menu item and they're tapping on some kind of widget that you created or some kind of design element that's a distraction, you'll actually get better results for your prototype that way. The other is a Look Back app. It's kind of like Silverback app, but for mobile. You can put in your application or your responsive website. It'll use the FaceTime or the front-facing camera of the device. It'll actually show you what the user is touching, plus it gives you the audio and facial expressions that the user is doing or giving while using your app.
Excellent, Andrew. And the last question that has come in is, how much user research is involved with each project?
Okay, that's a slightly loaded question because I would like to do more, but realistically budgets dictate how much you're going to actually be able to do. So, you know, you want to be able to stress to the client that the user testing is important, that prototyping is important, and you know, if you use something like the Agile method, you can probably hopefully bake in to your project budget the ability to do some user testing on a weekly basis as you roll out different sprints within the development cycle. Some clients will see as important, some don't. So you kind of have to even do some ad hoc user testing. You get your paper prototype, you go to a cafe. While you're sitting there, you're going to say, hey, can you take a look at this application that I'm building? Ask a couple questions. That doesn't really cost money. You can even buy someone a coffee. So, for under $4, you can probably get a good user testing session done. And then use tools to like plunk and look back as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for taking time and answering all these questions. That was the last question we've received. So I'd like to thank you and everyone for attending this webinar. This will conclude today's broadcast. You'll be able to access the recorded version of this webinar starting tomorrow morning in the webinar archive section of our website located at www.dclab.com. Our next webinar will be Thursday, October 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, titled Advantages of Data for the Life Sciences, presented by Patrick Bosak of Easy Data and Howard Schatz of DCL. Thank you everyone for attending and have a great day.